Of course, we are all fed up with BS and we all denounce its colonization of managerial discourse. But it seems to me that the question that remains unanswered is, why is this invasion happening? Why is there so much BS? Why are so many people blowing hot air? And it is all the more surprising that this BS invasion is occurring at a time when social networks are very powerful in pointing out the idiocies or the emptiness of all such discourses. As a professor myself, I'm often astonished that my students constantly mock the claims of management to be a science or to propose intellectual contributions such as value chain, blue ocean, Bayern scorecard, and so on. These students talk about these as being pure BS even when we present the contributions of incredible researchers like Weber, Simon, or March. And yet, when I find these same students a few years later in management positions, they are often the first to repeat the most recent management fads or buzzwords. So the question becomes, why do these managers who are so skeptical or even cynical during their studies switch so quickly to the realm of BS? I would like to propose two main reasons, but the underlying assumptions of these two reasons is that BS is a defense mechanism for managers. These managers don't spout BS for fun, at least not all of them. They say it because often, sadly, it is the only way they can cope with the demands of their job. That's why I gave this video a somewhat counterintuitive title, Hurrah for BS. BS being sort of a red flag and SOS from overwhelmed managers. But first a reminder, BS is not lying. It is speaking and asserting things without any concern for truthfulness. Harry Frankfurt, a philosopher, came up with this definition. The bullshitter is the one who lives in a world totally detached from reality, a world made only of words, decoupled from any connection to truth. Bullshitting is, another time, about saying stuff without any concern about checking if it is true or not. So the first reason, in my opinion, that explains this constant recourse to BS by managers is that many of them feel overwhelmed by their tasks. Too many contradictory injunctions, too much complexity, not enough time, not enough resources, and so on. It is becoming more and more difficult to cope with these tasks that are overflowing everywhere. Anxiety rises, and so does suffering. It becomes therefore a matter of survival for these almost overwhelmed managers to make themselves believe that their world is simple, that there are elegant and practical solutions that will allow them to be responsible, efficient, free, creative, innovative, and so on. And that's exactly the purpose of BS. It is a self-created delusion of a world under control and on which we can act. And the particular strength of managerial BS is that it is mutualized and reinforced collectively. Managers often share the same BS, the same hollow fads, and this allows to multiply the force of the illusion created because everyone relies on the same BS. But at the same time, this surge of BS shows the collective and general methodological disarray of managers in front of their tasks. Then the second reason for the invasion of BS is, to put it nicely, an epistemological reason. It is a reason linked to the fact that managers live in a world increasingly detached from reality, in which BS is not questioned. This is a somewhat provocative hypothesis because all managers repeat that they are always deeply rooted in reality and not in an intellectual or theoretical delirium. However, I am not so sure of this. Firstly, the indicators and reporting that structure the relationship with reality are extremely socially constructed and aggregated, and therefore create a virtual world that is often very far from reality. Second, it is extremely easy for managers to challenge any form of questioning of their discourse. Indeed, it is a bit paradoxical, but academic research shows that managers are able to explain and justify everything and its opposite. For instance, they can attribute performance to themselves when it is good and reject it when it is bad. This delusion of responsibility results in the complete erosion of any concern for speaking the truth or substantiating statements. This concern is further washed away by the fact that managers shun conflict and confrontation as evidenced by research. As a result, there is less and less outspoken opposition to even the smallest amount of BS. It is therefore very easy to say anything and therefore to bullshit oneself out of any situation. This leads me to conclude by saying that BS is a function, among other things, of two variables. The feeling of incapacity of managers, that we could relate to a growing imposter syndrome among managers on the one side, and on the other side, the absence of forces that remind these managers of reality, as well as a growing lack of critical thinking in management. But more fundamentally, BS is probably a sign of a management crisis. So many bullshitters means so many people for whom hot air is the only solution. Therefore, even if making fun of BS and laughing at the people producing it could look pleasant or the thing to do, it seems, however, to me that it would be a mistake, and it would be like making fun of people who are thinking but still trying to make themselves and their teams believe that they are going to make it. Spouting BS is in a way calling for help in an unconscious or very indirect way. Therefore, it seems to me that it is urgent to say that BS is a very serious issue, a kind of a collective call for help.